So in this video we are going to talk about what is Linux. So Linux basically is an open source operating system. Just like we have Windows and Mac operating system, Linux is also one of the operating systems. An operating system is a software that directly manages a system's hardware and resources like CPU, memory, and storage. The OS sits between applications and hardware and make the connections between all of your software and physical resources to do the work. So basically, an operating system serves as an interface between the hardware and the software. Now, what is a command line? The command line is your direct access to a computer. It is where you ask software to perform hardware actions that point and click graphical user interfaces. Simply can't ask. Command lines are available on many operating systems, proprietary or open source, but it's usually associated with Linux because both command lines and open source software together give users unrestricted access to their computer. So command line is basically your tool to directly access your computer. In other operating systems like Windows, you are given a graphical user interface wherein you can click and go to a particular file or access a particular application. But in Linux, if you want to open a particular file or access any application, you need to type the commands on the command line. Next, we move on to how does the Linux works. So think about an operating system like a car engine. An engine can run on its own, but it becomes a functional car when it's connected with a transmission, axles, and wheels. Without the engine running properly, the rest of the car don't work. Linux was designed to be similar to Unix but has evolved to run on a wide variety of hardware, from phones to computers. Every Linux based operating system involves the Linux kernel, which manages the hardware resources and a set of software packages that make up the rest of the operating system. Organizations can also choose to run their operating system on a Linux server. The OS includes some common core components like the GNU tools, among others. These tools give the users a way to manage the resources provided by the kernel, install additional software, configure performance and security settings, and more. All of these tools bundled together make up the functional operating system. Because Linux is an open source operating system, combinations of software can vary between Linux distributions. Now, what does the Linux include? So, there are three major components that make up the Linux operating system. These include the kernel, the user space, and your applications. So, kernel is known as the heart of the operating system. It is the kernel which is responsible for majority of operations, process management, file management, resource management, space management, and many other operations are performed by the kernel. So, the base component of the operating system is the kernel. Without it, the OS doesn't work. The kernel manages the system resources and communicates with the hardware. It is responsible for memory, process, and file management. The system user space. This is the administrative layer for system level tasks, which include configuration, software installs. This includes the shell, the command line, the daemons, the processes that run in the background, and the desktop environment. So, the user space is basically how the users will interact with the kernel. Users usually do not directly interact with the kernel. There is a mechanism for this which we will discuss in the next videos. So, users, in order to make the operating system perform any operation, Users make a call, and this call is known as a system call. These system calls in turn will make a call to the kernel, and the kernel then performs its operation. So basically the users don't interact with the kernel. Then comes the applications. These are the type of software that lets you perform any task. Apps include everything from desktop tools and programming languages to multi user business suites. Most Linux distributions offer a central database to search for and download additional apps. Now, Linux and open source. So, as already we discussed, that Linux is an open source operating system which is released under the GNU General Public License, which means that the source code for Linux is freely and openly available to anyone. Anybody can run, study, modify, and redistribute the source code, or even sell copies of their modified code as long as they do so under the same license. So that is why we can see that everywhere from phones to your computers, Linux is used. So it is freely and openly available, so anyone can modify the source code and make it suitable to their use. Linux has become the largest open source software project in the world. Professional and hobbyist programmers and developers from around the world contribute to the Linux kernel, adding features, finding and fixing bugs and security flaws, live patching and providing new ideas, all while sharing their contributions back to the community. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.